Good evening. This is the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for the two candidates running for Ventura County Sheriff. Tonight we have candidates Sheriff Bill Ayotte and Commander Jim Fryhoff. I'm David Marin with the League of Women Voters, and I'll be your moderator. Tonight's format is opening statements from both candidates, followed by questions submitted by you, the attendees, when you were registering for the Zoom, and then we will wrap up with closing statements. I will tell you right now, we had a lot of great questions, probably twice as many as we'll have time to ask tonight. I'll do my best to try and combine some of those. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the chair of the League of Women Voters Voter Services Committee, Kathy Morgan.
Thank you, David. Welcome to all our candidates and attendees, and thank you for being here tonight. The League of Women Voters was founded in 1920 with the mission of educating a new group of voters, women, who were granted the right to vote nationwide with the passage of the 19th Amendment 6 months later. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization committed to providing voters with factual, non-biased information, and as such, does not support a particular candidate or political party. The League today continues with the mission of empowering voters and defending democracy by registering voters, providing information about the candidates and the issues, getting out the vote, and supporting fair and transparent elections. The candidate forums are an opportunity for voters to hear from the various candidates and to get the information they need to make an informed choice when they vote. Attendees to the forum are invited to submit the questions they wish asked of the candidates when they register. The candidates have not been provided the questions in advance, and each candidate will have the opportunity to answer the questions posed. We are glad that you are here tonight to hear from our candidates. We hope that you get the information you need to make an informed choice. At this time, I would like to turn it back to tonight's moderator, David Marin. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So the candidates will have 1 minute, 30 seconds for their opening statements. We randomly drew numbers earlier, and we will begin with candidate Jim Fryoff when you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you, the League of Women Voters, for hosting this candidate forum, and thank you to all who are paying attention and watching for this very important election. I'm Jim Fryhoff. I'm a 31-year veteran with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. I was hired as a deputy at 19 years old. I've been in law enforcement my entire adult life. I was a cadet before I was a deputy down in Pasadena, where I grew up, but I moved to Ventura County when I was 19, when I was hired on with the Sheriff's Office. I've had the opportunity to work all over this organization in nearly every facet of this organization. I was the assistant chief of police in Thousand Oaks, two-time police chief, once in Ojai, and then once again in Thousand Oaks. I have a long history of building community partnerships, community programs to keep us safe. Most notably, programs dealing with homelessness, gang membership, substance abuse issues, and mental health. I currently sit as a law enforcement advisor on Behavioral Health Advisory Board. I'm also on the Prevention Services Subcommittee so that I can work very closely with our community to deal with the issues that are most impacting our society. The majority of the crime that we're facing here in Ventura County are from a lot of outside influences. We have organized retail theft crews, catalytic converter thefts, South American theft groups, and fentanyl pouring into our county. We need to have a strong leader who works with our community as well as all the other law enforcement agencies in our county. I'm endorsed by our Deputy Sheriff's Association, CME, Oxnard, Hueneme, and Santa Paula Police Office Association, Probation, and numerous other organizations throughout the county. I'm Jim Fryoff. I'm running for sheriff.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Bill Ayotte.
Well, thank you, and thank you to the League for hosting this forum, and to all of our viewers and listeners. I appreciate the opportunity to present myself before you. My name is Bill Ayotte. I'm the current sheriff of Ventura County. I've been in that position for the last 3.5 years, and I am a third-generation Venturan and a nearly 37-year veteran of law enforcement services. I've worked in every capacity of law enforcement, ranging from a police cadet, a very low-level position, a reserve police officer, a dispatcher, a police officer in the city of Port Hueneme in North Las Vegas, Nevada, and then as a peace officer with the Sheriff's Office for the last 26 years. Worked in every position within the Sheriff's Office, from deputy sheriff in the jails through the appointed executive position of assistant sheriff under then Sheriff Jeff Dean. Throughout that time, I've gained incredible wealth of experience that's well prepared me to lead this organization. And talk about leadership. over the last 4 years. The borderline incident, the 3 major wildfires that we've had, the global pandemic, a divisive political environment, the challenges this community's faced that I've led this organization, this community through, is a testament to what I offer in my second term. Leading this agency, this organization, this community through those challenges has well prepared me to lead this agency into the future. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bill, we're going to start with you. We're going to jump right into it and begin with homelessness. So let's talk about this. Can the county sheriff and the city police departments better coordinate resources to deal with homelessness? What are your plans for training, for task forces, maybe other aspects of coordinated programs? Or do you think the county and cities should each be responsible for their own homelessness issue?
Sorry, that was to me.
That was to you, Bill. Yeah.
Thank you. We absolutely need to coordinate resources. We do a very good job of that today. In fact, recently we had a cleanup program in the Santa Clara watershed, as well as the Ormond Beach drainage, where we recognize the accumulation of massive amounts of debris, human waste, huge settlements from the homeless community. We work very closely with the Oxnard Police Department and the Ventura Police Department to remove nearly 600 tons of waste out of those watersheds. Recognizing this problem is not something that's going away anytime soon, I recently created a 20-person homeless liaison unit to do just that, to work with other agencies to bring the collaborative resources to bear on the issue so that we can address the problem in a whole person, a whole issue way. And what I mean by that, this is truly a social issue. We see mental illness, drug dependence that creep into that segment of the community. We saw a 25% increase in our point in time count of the homeless in Ventura County. When we displace people from certain areas, be it business community, business environment, watersheds, or wherever, those people go somewhere. And so we need to have a cohesive approach going forward to make sure we address that issue completely and actually do meaningful work to solve the problem.
Thank you. Jim, same question to you. Can the county sheriff and the city police departments better coordinate resources to handle the homelessness? What are your plans regarding training, task forces, other aspects of coordinated care? Or do you think they're two separate issues? The county does their own and the cities do their own?
No, they're definitely a combined effort. As the assistant chief of police in Thousand Oaks, I created the very first vulnerable population position for the city of Thousand Oaks. The number one complaint I was receiving from our residents was about homelessness. I knew that we have a lot of services in our county through behavioral health, the Veterans Affairs Administration, nonprofits and non-government organizations who are not coming out and treating our homeless in Thousand Oaks. Mostly because most of those people are afraid to go into a homeless encampment on their own, rightfully so. So by having an officer assigned, I had that officer find out all the services that we have in the county to work together, find out what they do, where they fit in, and how can we all work together to start addressing the issues of homelessness in the Canal Valley. I did that in 2016. When I became the chief of police in Ojai, I created the very first collateral assignment for homelessness, dealing with the same issues up in Ojai. In Ojai, I didn't have extra staff. It's the smallest contract city of the sheriff's office. I had officers, I said, your job is to get to know all the resources we have here in the Ojai Valley, start working with those to provide services and yet hold accountable those who are experiencing homelessness. You definitely have to have both approaches. You want to make sure that you're giving them the opportunity to be successful, but at the same time, holding them accountable. It wasn't until 5 years later that the sheriff created our homeless liaison program that we have now. And this is something that should have been addressed many years ago, like I did in 2016 and 2017. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, we'll go with you. Unless there's a rebuttal, just raise your hand, candidates, if you want to rebut. Jim, we'll start with you on this next one. Share with us your plans about dealing with crime. Some of the specific categories that people have asked about are catalytic converters, particularly in the Ojai Valley, littering, overnight camping in the streets, those types of things. Share with us how you would deal with those type of crimes.
For sure. Most of the crimes that we're seeing with catalytic converter thefts tend to be from organizations that are outside of our county. So we need to make sure our staff is well aware of where these crimes are occurring, and that they're taking a very proactive approach to engaging with stops that are happening when these are happening, which most of the time are after hours, and making sure we're well aware of what's going on, as well as communicating with our citizens and residents. So when they hear sawing noises in the middle of the night, they know to call 911 so we can get there. There are been many instances now where catalytic converter thieves are armed. And because they are armed, it's really important that our residents call 911 and not try and interact on their own because of that. As far as quality of life issues like littering and such, we just need our community to work together to make sure we're addressing those concerns. I've got a long history of partnering with other agencies so that we can work on catalytic converter theft, substance abuse, and the other issues that are plaguing our communities. When I was the chief of police in Thousand Oaks, I created a group with LAPD, with their assistant chief and the 6 Valley Division captains, the Lost Hills captain, their 3 lieutenants, Simi Valley Police Department, Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, and Camarillo Police Departments, along with the National Park and State Park, sharing information that we were hearing and seeing so we could address these issues together. Because the majority of the crime that we're facing here in Ventura County is also happening across the border. And the more we can share information and work together, the more successful we can be. But a lot of this is communicating with our public, letting them know what the issues are that we're facing, how they can help, and how we can do this together and work together with one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, same question. What's your plan to enforce laws and reduce crimes against communities such as catalytic converters, littering, overnight camping, etc.?
Yeah, these are issues that are plaguing our communities today in increasing numbers. The organized thieves coming into Ventura County, largely from the county to our south, are really driving much of our crime rates up. We're seeing an increased number of catalytic converter thefts. We're seeing the ever-present organized retail thefts in communities. We're seeing organized thieves targeting residential areas and committing burglaries in those homes. I think we need to stay vigilant with the best practices and employing the latest technology and equipment to not only deter, but to capture people and bring to justice those that commit crimes in our community. And then certainly focus on the prevention side. We've done a very good job, I believe, of notifying the public of current crime trends. We've partnered with vehicle repair businesses to work on the catalytic converter theft plague that we're seeing nationwide. And we've communicated widely with other law enforcement partners on strategies that we've employed that have been successful, and then also communicated with the public so that they can be more vigilant and be more aware of suspicious and criminal behavior in their communities so that they can be a force multiplier for us in preventing those types of crimes in our county.
Thank you. Bill, we'll start with you on the next question, and this has to do with carrying concealed weapons. Discuss your position on carrying concealed weapons. Explain the difference between may issue and will issue, or I think that's sometimes referred to as shall issue, and tell us, as the questioner says, without ambiguity, where you stand.
Absolutely. I'm a supporter of a concealed carry program. We have a number of licenses issued right here in Ventura County, and I recently streamlined the process for applying for a concealed carry license. Why I'm such a strong supporter of the program is this. There is a comprehensive training that's required for licensed members to be issued a license. We conduct a very thorough background investigation, and I'm very careful about who I sign off and approve to carry a firearm in our community. I want people who are not quick-tempered, people who have a history of good decision-making, people who are not dependent on drug or alcohol for mood enhancement, and all around good citizens. And that's what we have. In instances where we have somebody with a license who misbehaves, we'll revoke that license in accordance with the law. But I am a supporter of the program, and I believe that a well-informed and well-prepared citizenry in our community is less likely to be victimized. And in fact, I would even tell you that those people that carry firearms in the community are far less likely to get into some sort of encounter that would result in some sort of violence, because they're so hyper aware of the consequences of such, and they're more aware to avoid those types of situations.
Thank you. Jim, same question. Discuss your position on carrying concealed weapons. Talk about the difference between may issue and will issue, and without ambiguity, where do you stand?
I am pro CCW. I'm pro carry concealed weapon permit process. That's because I'm pro Second Amendment. We have a law that provides a right for our citizens to be able to bear arms. For those who receive a concealed weapon permit, they must show good character, and they're going to get the additional training that's necessary for them to be able to carry responsibly. The reality is the majority of our gun owners in this county are responsible gun owners, and they want to be able to protect themselves and their families in those times when law enforcement is not present, or in today's world where we have a lot of incidents that are occurring that where law enforcement is not there in time to deal with preventing a crisis. Our residents need the opportunity to protect themselves and their families, go through the proper training, be certified so that they can carry lawfully here in Ventura County. So I am very much a supporter of concealed weapon permits. I do believe that we have a process and it has been improved. We need to make sure that we have a process that allows people to renew without them going expired, and also have a process to remove those from people who have shown that they cannot own one or possess one in a manner that's conducive to all of our safety. We do have a process in place. And if we have somebody who violates our trust and does things that are inappropriate with a firearm, we will be able to remove that so that person does no longer have that ability to carry concealed on their person. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, our new question. We'll start with you regarding the jails. Even if somebody is arrested in Oxnard, I think most people know that the sheriff is responsible for county jails incarcerating anyone in the county. So Jim, discuss with us the conditions of our county jails and how our jails are able to accommodate disabled and mentally ill inmates, especially ones with unique situations. So share with us your philosophy there, what you think we're doing. And are there funds that you would either seek or access to make improvements? Do you have strategies for modernizing the facilities?
So our jails are very well run. I currently oversee our detention services facility. I have not been in the jail in nearly 14 years, and there's been a lot of changes, mostly because of the number of inmates that we have that are with us for a much longer period of time. As a result of the realignment of AB 109, we now house non inmates, so non-violent, non-sexual offense, and non-serious felony inmates who are doing multiple year sentences in a county jail that was designed to house people for just 1 year. We have a high population of inmates who have significant mental health issues. As a result, we do have a therapeutic inmate management unit. That unit is specifically designed for inmates who come in who are experiencing crisis still. And we have a process where we contact the family members to find out what triggers them or helps calm them down, ways we can then give rewards so they take medication so they can start programming properly and then taking their medication so that they can not only get through their court proceedings, but also then be able to transition out. We recently partnered with the Board of Supervisors for a Stepping Up initiative so that we can do beyond just treating them while they're in custody, but making sure we have a good warm handoff when they get out so that we would not continue with this revolving door that we're seeing right now. Significant mental illness is probably one of our number one concerns that we have within our custody environment. We also have a much more violent inmate in our custody that's not because they're primarily from state prison, and now they're being housed in our county jail. And as a result, our county jail is full with much more violent criminals and people that are committing low-level offenses we have very little room for. And so it's become a very big challenge for us. So seeking funding would be really important.
Thank you. Bill, same question. Discuss the conditions of the county jails and how they're accommodating the disabled, mentally ill, inmates with special unique situations. And are there funds you would access to make improvements, or do you have a strategy for modernizing?
Yeah, thank you. We have two primary jail facilities, a third booking facility and housing area for low-level offenders at our Olson Road station. Our main jail is 50 years old, or excuse me, 40 years old, and it's starting to show its age. We're seeing failing plumbing, infrastructure that needs to be repaired, electronics and so forth. So that is a challenge for us, and we're working with our General Services Agency on maintaining that physical structure. Our Todd Road Jail facility is a bit newer, but it's challenged as well. We're replacing pipes and recently did a kitchen project, and we're building a therapeutic facility, 64 beds currently, that is designed for the acute ill and the chronically mentally ill. It's a place that is going to promote healing, which is something that happens in the jail facilities. We have an increasing number of the mentally ill that find a place in our facilities. And so I was proud to oversee the implementation of the therapeutic inmate management unit to seek the funding and implementation of the Stepping Up initiative. I'm proud to have brought jail-based competency treatment right here to Ventura County so that inmates with severe mental illness can be returned to competency right here in Ventura County. And I was proud to implement the medication assistant treatment program to help get the drug dependent off of drugs and help ease their transition back into the community. So we're doing exciting things in our jail, and I'm proud of the work that's being done.
Thank you. Bill, we're going to start with you on this next question. So for the audience, Ventura County has 10 cities. Many of those cities have their own police departments like Simi Valley, Ventura, Oxnard. Other cities contract with the sheriff's department like Ojai, Camarillo, Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, and I'm not sure if I missed any. But for the question, Bill, explain how the sheriff develops and manages these service contracts with the city. Is there any difference in the way that the incorporated areas of the county versus the unincorporated are treated?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We have 5 contract cities. They're all different. For each city, however, we have a minimum level of service, and that's the bare bones number of staffing that we require to police that city. And as those cities are municipalities, they are treated separately from the county areas that surround them. We require a police chief of some sort. It's a sheriff's manager, and the level of management experience depends on the size of the city. We have 3 captains that serve as police chiefs. That's our first level of management, and 2 commanders that serve as police chiefs in our larger cities. The larger cities have, in essence, a menu to select from. They can hire and employ, if you will, more resources to serve that community, such as motorcycle deputies, gang unit deputies, and so forth. And so most of the cities do that. Our 2 smaller cities, Ojai and Fillmore, tend to go with the lesser services, in fact, the lowest level of service that we offer for a municipality. There's been a lot of discussion about sharing of resources. Other counties do things in a different way so that they can, for example, Los Angeles has multiple small cities that contract for police services with the county that do share resources through those county contracts.
Thank you. Jim, same question. Explain how the sheriff develops and manages the service contracts with the cities. Discuss if there's any differences in the way the incorporated parts of the county are treated versus the unincorporated.
As being the chief of police of 2 of our contracts, both the largest and the smallest contract within the sheriff's office for Thousand Oaks and Ojai, they do have different needs and different expectations, and also what they can afford to be able to provide services for their community. Also, one of the issues that our cities have to provide that the unincorporated does not is traffic. Our Ojai is responsible for traffic enforcement within the city of Ojai. Thousand Oaks is responsible for traffic enforcement within the city of Thousand Oaks. Our unincorporated areas, their traffic enforcement is conducted by the California Highway Patrol. So they need less of a service in that regard. And so we were able to use officers for patrol, for responding to emergencies, dealing with quality of life issues, and building relationships and partnerships with the community that we're serving. I had the opportunity to do that both as the assistant chief in Thousand Oaks, the chief in Thousand Oaks, and the chief in Ojai, where I made an effort of making sure that I was able to reach out to the community, have them understand where we fit in, making sure the officers understand that this is a community, even if they don't live there, this is a community I want them to serve as though they did live there, that the family that members live there, that their relatives live there, and their neighbors were there. This sets the stage for how they're supposed to interact with the community that we're serving. Those cities then depend on me as the leader for those to make sure we're developing excellent police services for those cities. And the officers that work between the city and the county go between both of those assignments. So the officers are very well aware of both the unincorporated as well as the incorporated areas within each of our sheriff's jurisdictions.
Thank you. Jim, next question. Let's turn a little bit more to just philosophies. Maybe we'll learn a little more about differences between the 2 of you. So Jim, do you have any plans as far as transforming law enforcement? And let me set the stage. We know that violent and property crime need different types of training, response. There's personal problem issues that you're dealing with as far as criminals. So tell us about your strategies for any transformation within the department and dealing with the different types of crime that you encounter.
We are currently facing lots of crime that are influencing our areas from outside of Ventura County: catalytic converter thefts, organized retail theft crews, South American theft groups, fentanyl, like I said, pouring in. We need to work very closely with our other agencies, create better task force to work together, because the people that are victimizing Thousand Oaks are also victimizing Simi Valley and Moore Park. We can do more together when we work together. and also making sure that we're partnering with our community. Also, I don't want to measure our officers against one another necessarily. Our officers work different beats, different hours, and at the end of the month to try and compare them to one another is very short-sighted. When we start comparing them and forcing them into a box, we stop their ability to be human beings and interact with our community in a meaningful way where they can actually have an impact. And they know they have the ability to work with their community to solve really issues that are facing us, whether it's substance abuse, mental health issues, and challenges, so they can work with the family members and guide them towards services, but yet hold people accountable. I want our officers to be able to use the brain they have and who we hire to be really good officers to make sure they're making decisions on whether or not they need to make an arrest now, whether calling a parent might be more prudent. Maybe a warning is more justified than writing a citation. Those are the things that I want to make sure is that our officers have that latitude to make those decisions. Plus, they're not going to be challenged or wanting to leave the beat they're responsible for to try and get an arrest or a citation. I want them to be responsive to the community that they're serving. And if there's no arrests or citations that happen in that area, so be it. That means they're patrolling their area and keeping them safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, same question. Do you have any plans regarding transforming the department? And how would you handle the different types of major crimes, such as violent versus property? Is there different types of training and other things you might do?
Thank you for the question. I think we have a really strong strategy for reducing crime and keeping Ventura County safe. It doesn't revolve around statistics and taking discretion away from our deputies. It involves a comprehensive approach of working with the youth to give young people who are likely to go astray additional opportunities for good decision making, to keep them away from gangs, to keep them out of a life of crime, and to give them a pathway into being a productive member of society. We've seen great successes in some of our more violent neighborhoods with that type of approach that's been in use for better than 15 years. We've seen dramatic reductions in gang activity and violent crime in those communities that we've employed those types of approaches, including partnering with the city of Oxnard. So we have grant funding that pays for a youth reinvestment grant that does exactly that. I also think our approach with working with our inmates who are in our jail system, trying to get them help for their mental health conditions, trying to get them out of drug dependence, and giving them a support system to when they leave our facilities, they can be successful in the community. Enforcement and ticket writing and so forth, that's a component of what we do as well, but it's the holistic approach to crime fighting and being adaptive to crime trends. That's what matters, and that's how we keep Ventura County safe.
Rebuttal, Jim, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's a complete misstatement as far as that we're not focused on stats. Our organization prides itself on stats. Every month, we have a meeting called ComStat, where officers are being measured on number of citations they write, and the number of arrests they're making, and it's being noted in their evaluations, and it's also keeping them from getting well-deserved positions within our organization because they did not have enough stats. So I just want to clarify that we are a very stat-driven organization, and we need to get back to working with the community, letting our officers make the decisions at the time when they're dealing with it so they can do what's best for all of us in our community.
And rebuttal from Bill.
Yeah, I very clearly value data, partnered with a data analytics firm to exploit data so that we can apply resources in a more effective way. By no means is that a be-all end-all to crime fighting in our communities. It's certainly one measurement of where crime is occurring, what time it's occurring, where we should apply resources more effectively, how we should spend the very important taxpayer dollars that make this operation work. But statistics as a measurement for an employee's performance, that's really a misspeak.
I have to stop you there. Thank you. Bill, we're going to start the next question with you. This one is also looking forward. So tell us, Bill, what you think is the most important challenge to the Sheriff's Department. Where do you see the Sheriff's Department in 10 years? And what will you do to help get it there?
You know, I think one of our greatest challenges right now is recruiting and retaining the best and brightest employees. We've seen other agencies in different places lower standards so that they can attract more people to the profession and get them out there in the communities doing the good work that we need them to do and keeping us safe. We see today a skyrocketing cost of living in Ventura County. We see more scrutiny being placed upon the people that serve as peace officers in our community. But we see peace officers in other parts of the country that make mistakes and are being prosecuted and jailed. And so with, and we're our own best recruiting tool. Our employees are the ones that advocate for people to come and work for this organization. And it's a tough sell these days. And so I worry about people coming into the profession to serve as the community's protectors, also people coming in and into the agency and leading. My vision is to make sure our agency is strong and resilient and well prepared to tackle any challenges that occur in our community. I think we can get there. We've recently enacted measures to entice people to come to our agency through recruitment bonuses and through enhanced screening processes that make it easier for people to apply for employment with us. So I'm excited about the future in that way.
Thank you. Jim, same question. What do you think is the most important challenge to the department? Where do you see the department in 10 years and what will you do to get it there?
Rising crime that we're seeing right now because criminals feel emboldened to commit crime because of a soft on crime approach seen to the county to our south. We need to make sure that we are very strong here in Ventura County, that we arrest offenders, we hold them accountable so that they know that not to come to Ventura County to commit crime. Recruitment and retention in this day in law enforcement is very challenging. Our employees are our best recruiters, and they are not recruiting right now because they're dissatisfied with the leadership that we have in this organization, which is why they have endorsed me. Not only the Deputy Sheriff's Association, but our Corrections Officers Association and the Service Employees International Union. So all three associations that represent the membership of the Sheriff's Office have endorsed me because they need a change in leadership. So they will want to recruit people. And also working more with our communities, not just those that we're serving within the Sheriff's jurisdiction from our contract cities, but with Oxnard, Simi, Santa Paula, Hueneme, and Ventura to make sure that they know where we stand, that we're here to help solve the issues of crime, work together in a partnership, and they can want to be then part of that solution. The problem is people think about law enforcement right now as, oh, they don't want to get into law enforcement. There is no better time to get into law enforcement than right now. If you want to be the change in Ventura County, you want to be the change to make our community better, there's an opportunity to join. We have the space. We'd love to hire you. We'll train you, and you'll be able to do this job successfully and have a great time doing it. Protecting your community, doing good for a living is awesome.
Thank you. And rebuttal, Bill?
Yeah, thank you. I interact with sheriffs all across the nation, right here in California, every one of the other 57 sheriffs in the county. And I can tell you that recruitment and retention is the top issue for every sheriff. It's a nationwide, even a worldwide epidemic now, something we saw following the murder of George Floyd, the increased pressures and scrutinies on the profession. I appreciate my opponent's zeal for his self-worth in terms of his endorsements, but it's a much bigger issue than that.
Stop you there. And okay, let's see. We will begin the next question with you, Jim. So let's learn a little bit about your leadership style. So candidates, please explain, Jim, you're first. Please explain your leadership style. And if you can, give us an example from your past where your leadership style was able to be effective and make a difference.
I'm very much a servant leader. I believe in leading from the front, making sure that I set the expectations of our staff, making sure they know where I'm coming from, what I'm hoping for our goals to be, working well with our community. As I mentioned earlier, when I was the chief of police in Ojai, I wanted to make sure that our community knew that we were there to serve them. But me telling the community that alone is not good enough. Me working with our officers and letting them know what my expectation of how they're going to treat our community is what's important. They see me do it, lead by example, set the expectation, and then make sure they have the opportunity to do that. I did it by having coffee with the chief, and it wasn't just me as the chief that went. I brought my officers along with me so the community could meet the officers that were protecting them, and likewise, the officers could meet their community members. Oftentimes, if you only see the bad in a community, it's tough to see the good. I wanted to make sure that our officers understood that there was a lot of good in Ventura County. There's nearly 900,000 residents here in Ventura County, and we only have 1,300 inmates in our county jail. There's a lot of people out there that are doing the right thing and working hard, raising their families. I lead by making sure the officers know that they're supported, make sure they understand that they're going to be held accountable, because there's one thing is that there's no good officer out there that wants to work with a bad officer. There's no corrupt officer that we will be tolerating. If there's any issues at all, we will deal with it swiftly, because we need to make sure that we continue to maintain our public trust and keep our community safe. And you do that through strong leadership, which is stating a vision, expectations, and follow-up.
Thank you. Bill, same question. Please explain your leadership style. And if you can, share with us some examples from your past where your leadership style was effective in making a difference.
Well, thank you. I very much believe in leadership by example. And we talk about leadership, and there's different styles, and I think there's a different place and time for various styles of leadership. In some situations in this profession, you require an autocratic leadership style. We saw that at the borderline, where swift action needed to be taken and quick decisions needed to be made. And that's an important part of this profession. Leading by example is very important. Leading with humility, exercising strong ethics in what we do, in our word and our deed, honesty and openness with those that we serve. And leadership is much more than simply inspiring the men and women within the organization. It's the public face of the organization that helps to build trust in the community. And that is perpetuated by setting a culture where our employees can be successful, where they have the latitude to make decisions. There's many ways to do this job correctly, and only a couple ways to do it wrong. And giving people that room to stretch and grow. I believe in developing leaders as well. I have more than 50 managers within my team, and they need to learn by doing and by exercising their freedoms to manage without being micromanaged.
Thank you, Bill. I have to stop you there. Gentlemen, let's turn to one of the national issues that has affected every law enforcement agency across the country. Talk about defunding the police, resentment about the police. Certainly your deputies have been emotionally impacted by seeing this decline in the respect shown for law enforcement. So the question, let's put it together and say, defund the police and anti-law enforcement sentiment have been part of a national discussion. How are you dealing with this within Ventura County and with your deputies and your civilians? Are there serious intentions among leaders to change public safety that you think is incorrect? And Bill, you're up first.
Thank you. This is a big topic of concern. It contributes to our difficulties in recruiting and retaining employees right now. I've been around quite a long time. I've seen several seminal events that have impacted morale and people wanting to come to the profession. And those events have also triggered change, and in many cases, good change. And I call this period of time the professionalizing of law enforcement. I started in 1985, and the way I was trained and the materials I had to use to do the job were vastly different than they are today. Community expectations have changed as well, technology and so forth. And it is a challenge when something happens in some part of the country, or even in another part of the world, and our working environment changes and becomes more challenging because of it. And it's important for our employees to understand that they are supported, and that there's a structure in place for them to continue to be successful here. We had some conversations in our community about defunding and so forth, and it was really a campaign of educating the public, elected officials, about what we do here and why we do it, and how we work hard to make sure our employees, our staffing, are professional and do their job in a just way in the community.
Thank you. Jim, same question to you. Defund the police and anti-law enforcement sentiment have been part of the national discussion. How are you seeing this discussed within the ranks? And do you think there's serious issues from community leaders that you would either not support or could erode support for public safety?
We are very fortunate here in Ventura County to have an overwhelmingly supportive community of law enforcement. And that's a long tradition of treating our communities well, being professional, hiring professionals, not lowering our standards for who we hire. Only 1 out of 100 people that apply get hired, and that's with good reason. If we lower our standards, we end up with much bigger problems later on. There's no room to defund the police. We do need to work well with all the other agencies that we have in the county, because there are some things that law enforcement does not need to be the primary response unit on. There are many things that we can be an assistant to, or parting with mental health, and making sure that we're not trying to see everything through law enforcement's lens, because we may not be the best resource at that time. That doesn't mean we have resources to give up to go elsewhere. We still have a lot of work that we need to do as well, but this is an opportunity for us to work much more collaboratively with all the other agencies in the county and in government and with the state, to make sure that people are getting the resources they need to deal with any number of issues that our community is facing. When I was a chief in Thousand Oaks, I went to briefing routinely, and I thanked the officers for the job they're doing, told them they're doing a great job. And I let them know how much the community does support them by evidence of people bringing in food, coffee to the station on a regular basis to show their support for law enforcement at a very critical time for us. And I let them know, remember, this is a community that we're serving. You keep treating them well, and they are going to support us.
Thank you. Jim, we'll start with you on the next question. We'll stay on this issue of national topics, and this time we'll talk about racial equity. So this is a topic, obviously, of national discussion. What is your definition of racial equity? How will you ensure there is racial equity, both in the policing and within the hiring in the department?
Well, one thing we need to make sure is that when we start engaging with our community in a meaningful way, we're going to attract a lot of people from our community who are going to come and want to work for us. Making sure that our organization is reflective of the community that we serve is going to both give us credibility and the ability to work with our community in meaningful ways. So as racial equity is making sure that there's not disparate treatment between any group and another, whether racial or otherwise, that we are dealing with the crime issues that we're facing, that we're working together with the community to solve those issues. If we try and solve it on our own, oftentimes those solutions are very short-lived because we did not engage all the stakeholders. By engaging all the stakeholders in any issue we're seeing, the changes that we want to have are going to be much more long-standing, because we're going to have buy-in from the community we're serving. If we're seeing an issue in the community, we need to communicate that with them so that we can come up with a strategy to effectively deal with it. So when people see extra police cars in their neighborhood, they don't think they're being over-policed as a punitive measure, but more being able to communicate why we're there, what we're hoping to accomplish, and how they can be part of that change, how they can be helped part of the solution so that they don't see us as the enemy. The reality is we are here to protect and serve everyone. And the more we can work together with everyone, the less they're going to see us as the enemy, and we will not see our community as the enemy either. This is for us to be Team Ventura County and for us to work together.
Thank you. Bill, same question about racial equity. What is your definition of racial equity? How will you ensure there is racial equity both in the policing and within the staffing?
My view on racial equity is that one of fairness. And I think that is at the heart of what we do, or what we should do in public safety. And it transcends more than racial components. We're talking about religious, gender, identity, a variety of other issues that would require us to treat people in the same manner, regardless of circumstances. And I think it's very important that we be well informed and understand culturally how those things really play out in the community. I was having a conversation earlier today about just this, and I know from talking with people that they view things very differently based on their upbringing, what their experiences are in life, and so forth. And it's really important to have that intuitive understanding of the communities we serve, people that work within our organization, so that we certainly as law enforcement leaders can better craft policy and can better lead so that we can be more effective in the community. I think having those conversations with members in our community are very important. I'm happy to be on the state's racial identity profiling advisory board, where I meet with activists and interested people from throughout the state and talk about these very issues.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on. Bill, you're up first with this. This is a very interesting question. So Bill, we'll start with you. What's your best advice you can give someone in their early 20s in college who wants to go into this profession. So share with us a little bit about how you would guide young people who are interested in the profession, what level of education and training, that type of thing.
Thank you for that. This is really important to us because we are on the precipice of a recruiting a challenge. I talked, and it depends on the person's background. I was talking to a young man just the other day. He says, I'm interested in law enforcement, and I think maybe the sheriff's office is for me. And we talked about what he was interested in doing, how he wanted to serve, what he wanted to do. And I think having an understanding of what really motivates somebody, how they see themselves fitting into a life of service in our community, helps to sort of tailor the answer to that question. I really value formal education. I think there's a lot of strengths that can be gained from setting goals and achieving those goals. Doesn't necessarily tell me how smart somebody is, but it tells me they have a level of maturity that contributes to being a good employee at some point in time. And I really encourage people to stay away from drugs and alcohol. Those two things tend to be the source of a lot of problems for prospective employees, especially in California, where you have the proliferation of cannabis. Still federally illegal, still a disqualifier for people that want to become employees for us if they're using this substance. And a lot of people don't understand that because it's legal in California and widely available.
Thank you. And Jim, what's your best advice to give someone in their early 20s in college or maybe not in college, but early 20s who wants to go in the profession? And what will you do to try and bring in more young people?
So once again, our community outreach is really important. Having our officers making sure they're recruiting every time they have an opportunity. Throughout this campaign, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people of all ages who have expressed an interest in law enforcement. And I ask them, what are you trying to get out of law enforcement? Where would you like to serve? Where do you live? One of the benefits of the sheriff's office is we have a lot of opportunities. We have our gang unit, we have our jails, we have our court services, patrol, special investigations, many opportunities. And of course, those are just our sworn positions. We also have scientists, we have dispatchers, we have volunteers. There's a lot of opportunities for people to help. For people that are 20 and are looking at getting in law enforcement, especially if they're going to school, my guidance is always get your degree in something other than criminal justice. We're going to teach you what you need to know in the academy, and there's a lot of follow-up training, and laws are constantly shifting. So it's really important to get your degree in something that you could use for something else: communication, business, psychology, for a couple reasons. One, law enforcement is a dangerous business. And if they get injured and they only have a criminal justice degree, they may be stuck not being able to use that degree. Whereas we hire people who are looking for people who are mature, who make good decisions, who can show some type of rational behavior, including completing school. And so if they can get a degree in something that's useful, that they enjoy, also, they have something to fall back on in the event they do get injured. So I want to make sure that I'm looking after them for not just now, for us as an organization, but for them in their long-term of their life as well.
Thank you. We've had quite a few questions regarding endorsements, various signs out there, type of thing. Obviously, this race is very high profile. So Jim, we'll start with you on this one. So some of the, let's say, takeaways that attendees have said is that some of the endorsements imply that only the deputies or police officers know who should run the department. So share with us what attributes you think the general voter should look for when selecting the next sheriff.
The voter should be looking for is somebody who's going to lead in an organization, not just our deputies, but our professional staff, our scientists and our volunteers. Somebody who's got a proven history of leadership, which I have. I've been able to work with and develop employees throughout my 31-year career. One thing that I always hear from people is how I give them the time. I help cultivate their relationship. I put them in positions of being successful. I've always told everybody, you can do as much as you want in this career. You just have to put in the hard work. So I made a goal of mine to make sure that I work with everybody to develop future leaders in our organization, because somebody's going to have to step in when I retire someday as a leader in this organization. And there's many opportunities to lead. I am not only endorsed by the law enforcement agencies within Ventura County, but I'm also endorsed by LAIUNA, by the Central Coast Labor Council, the Service Employees International Union, and many more, as well as the entire City Council of Ojai, the entire City Council of Moore Park, the majority of the City Council in Simi Valley. because of my long-standing reputation of working with others to build partnerships, to do what's best for our community, to keep us safe, support the officers that are doing the job so they enjoy coming to work, especially in these very challenging times, and making sure they know our community is supportive of them. And for them not to lose sight of that, despite the media and other rhetoric, that our community does support law enforcement, and we need to keep it that way. And we're going to do so by keeping that trust with the community we serve.
Thank you. Bill, same question to you as far as endorsements. What attributes do you believe the general voter should look for when voting for sheriff?
We touched on this a moment ago, and I talked about employing ethics and honesty and openness in leadership. And I think always the best indicator of future performance is past performance. And I want to, pointing back to the challenges that I've had during my first term, beginning on day one with the aftermath of the Borderline incident, the two major wildfires that were burning at the same time in our county, our recovery from those things, as well as our response to the global pandemic, the political division that has gripped our community, the social unrest that we kept from bubbling over in Ventura County and leading to violent encounters and destruction of property. Despite those things, and we've overcome those things, we're still working through the global pandemic, of course, and social justice issues remain, and we're working on those. But despite those things, the accomplishments that I've had during this term are pretty remarkable. And I would encourage anybody to visit my website and take a look at those. We've had a period of prosperity in the last 3.5 years that's really unrivaled. Upgrades to equipment, facilities, vehicles, aircraft. I know how to get things done. I work hard for the residents, and my desire is purely to serve. And that's why I'm seeking re-election.
Thank you. Bill, we'll stay with you on this next question. I'm not familiar with this particular incident, but it says that the Sheriff's Department was sued at one time due to violations of the California Public Records Act. So if you will describe the situation with litigation, do you believe your department is facing as much litigation, more than most departments? What will you do to avoid litigation in the future?
I work hard to avoid litigation. I've implemented some programs to help us do just that, including a constitutional policing unit, an incident review team, and then a jail training unit. We were sued by the First Amendment Coalition for failing to produce records that were required to be produced pursuant to a new statute that had been enacted. What's not widely known is that we were injuncted from releasing those records by the Ventura Superior Court. And that was on an action filed by the Deputy Sheriff's Association. So we were prevented from complying with Senate Bill 1421. And the moment the court order was lifted, the lawsuit appeared. And so we feverishly worked to comply with the requirements of Senate Bill 1421 and produce those records forthwith for that organization, the others that were seeking them. It's a challenging environment. We have a very litigious job. I spoke about earlier about the challenges in our detention environment. A great many legal actions come from the way in which we care for our inmates in our custody, and we're continuously adapting so that we do a better job. We stay ahead of litigation and minimize the likelihood of being exposed to that. Part of my communications with sheriffs from around the state relate to those that have court-ordered oversight and have had to pay big dollar settlements related to litigation brought against their agencies, and we learn from them and we make adjustments here so that we try and avoid those troubles locally.
Thank you. Jim, same question. I'll reframe it slightly since you weren't the sheriff at the time, but share with us your perspective on what happened regarding the Sheriff's Department being sued for Public Records Act violations, and what will you do if elected to avoid litigation in the future?
It's really important for government agencies to comply with the Public Records Act. When you talk about transparency in government, this is what we're talking about. People's right to information that we have, people's right to understand how their government is performing and what they're doing. And this is really important for us to make sure that all of our officers and our staff are familiar with the Public Records Act, and that the request does not have to come in through one particular person. The request can be made of any of our employees, and our employees need to know where to send that information to make sure we comply with the law. Now, in the case with the lawsuit, there was an injunction, and that's part of the court process. People have the ability to file lawsuits, to try and get injunctions, to try and protect employees, or to find out if it was what was intended by the law to begin with. But the moment that is resolved by the courts, then we comply with the law. That's where our job is, to comply with the law, and making sure that our staff understand how public records requests work, why they exist, why we comply with them, because it builds trust. The more we can communicate with our community about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we came to those decisions, the better off we're all going to be. And the amount of collaboration we're going to have with our community is going to go up exponentially. Transparency, being forthcoming, are critical components of policing for people to have trust in their organization from the sheriff's office.
Thank you. Jim, start the next question with you. What is your position on community-based review boards as part of overall community policing? My understanding is that the Sheriff's Department does not have a community-based review board. And I think other agencies, perhaps LAPD is an example of a review board. So correct me where I'm wrong, but what is your position on community-based review boards as part of overall community policing?
So we have a grand jury, which is, I would say, what I would argue is actually a community-based review board. They do have unfettered access to our records and to our operations to see what we're doing, and then to report into the presiding judge if they see that there's anything that concern them that we have to then answer for. So I do believe that we have an organization that does have oversight. We also have a board of supervisors we're reporting to with a lot of our comings and goings within the sheriff's office, grants that we seek, and other things, including whether or not we're being sued and how that is handled. One thing that we have to make sure that we do is that we work strongly to make sure that our community knows that we're doing everything we can to be transparent, forthcoming in what we're working on. I apologize. I lost my train of thought. Can you rephrase that question?
Sure. What is your position on community-based review boards as part of an overall community policing strategy?
And so as far as review boards, there's a lot for a community review board to know, to be able to provide disciplinary input, which is what they have in a lot of agencies that have fallen under consent decrees. For one of the things that I would like to implement is a community partnership, where we have members from our community that work with each of our police chiefs of our areas to make sure that they're understanding what the issues our community is facing and how the police chief can help address those. And it's a twofold. By community policing, it's always been what law enforcement did to our communities. Community partnership is something that we can do together. And by hearing from the community members directly, the chief is going to be able to better decide how to interact and solve the issues that our community is facing.
Thank you. Bill, same question. What is your position on community-based review boards as part of an overall community policing strategy?
I think interacting with the community is really important for getting an understanding of what's important to that community, from learning about different perspectives. Something we've done here in this agency for a very long time. We've interacted with the faith-based community and learned from them about issues of concern. We currently have a public safety racial equity advisory group that consists of county leadership from the justice agencies, the chief executive's office, and members of the activist community from all different perspectives. It's a great opportunity to learn and grow and serve the community in a better way. In terms of oversight, and this oversight wasn't specifically mentioned, we have a great deal of oversight that's already in place. The grand jury is a very good example. Last year they were in our records and looking at many of our operations, ranging from internal affairs investigations to academy training to jail operations to the way we interact with the community and encounters on patrol. And that is a very good opportunity for the community to hear about a review of our operations from an organization that has statutory ability to get into records that are concealed from public's view. We also have our state and our local auditor, our district attorney's office, and our supervisors that control budgetary items. So there's a great deal of review already in place.
Thank you, Bill. So we're going to ask again about management style and talk about how you deal with officers who are not upholding the standards. I can remember in the newspaper, we've seen stories about officers stealing pharmaceuticals, civilians, officers, or staff, I should say, civilian staff defacing public signs. There's been other incidents with officers. Tell us about the circumstances, Bill, that you would terminate an officer, and where does that fit within upholding the civilians' rights versus the law enforcement officers?
You know, our employees are held to a higher standard, and that goes into our hiring process. We have a very high bar for people to gain employment with the sheriff's office. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not something we want to lower. Our disciplinary process within our agency is very structured. Of course, depends on the nature of the person's violation, as well as their background, whether they're a chronic violator, whether there's some history of bad behavior that needs to be addressed in a progressive way. So we have an internal affairs bureau. It's comprised of very seasoned employees who have a well-rounded and reasoned view of the environment in which we operate. And these people are, you know, they're law enforcement officers, yes. And there's been conversation about this type of duty being taken over by somebody independent from the agency. But there are things that we look at, such as use of force and Fourth Amendment issues and other things that are very specific to law enforcement work. And so the work that's done by our Professional Standards Bureau in crafting policy, in reviewing incidents of employee misconduct, and in some cases sustaining or exonerating employees in that regard is absolutely critical to a trustworthy organization.
Thank you. Jim, same question to you. And I remember another incident. We had an officer who was working in the jails, I believe, assaulted an inmate type of thing. So there have been some bad apples, which I'm sure all of your officers are dismayed to see a bad apple within the organization. Jim, state all the circumstances where you would terminate an officer, and how does that compare the rights of the civilian versus the rights of the law enforcement officer?
When we sign up for law enforcement, we know that we are going to be held to a higher standard. That's what we agreed to, that we are here to uphold the law and be an example for our community. And unfortunately, there have been several people who have betrayed our trust within the organization and certainly betrayed the trust of our community. And it's important for our organization to know that they're going to be held accountable. We do have a robust internal affairs bureau that is able to investigate allegations. We also have policies that require officers to report misconduct, especially with use of force, making sure they're also intervening in that force if it's unnecessary. The reality is the majority of our officers are good officers. And like I mentioned earlier, there's not a single good officer out there that wants to work with a bad officer. As a leader, an executive in the organization, it's our duty to make sure that we're holding people accountable and letting them know that there are consequences for bad behavior. You know, one of the things that has been a great advent for law enforcement is body cameras for both sides of that camera, for the officer to be able to show that they did things properly, while at the same time, if they didn't, we have the entire footage to be able to see. Oftentimes we'd seen very short video clips that did not show the entire picture, and a body camera that shows the entire thing, shows more of what happened so we can make better decisions. But if we have an officer who is violating our community trust, we need to take swift action to protect our community, to make sure that we maintain the trust of our community, and then also go through a process to make sure they have a fair process to determine what their punishment is going to be. And if they do have a history of abusing their authority, that they can be disciplined up to including termination.
Thank you. There are some who might argue, okay, all of that sounds great, but what about the training of officers who are trying to be good, but they have implicit bias? So share with us your strategies for actually elevating the skill set of your deputies so that they understand what implicit bias is in serving and protecting.
Our organization has, I assume I'm first, I apologize.
Yes, you are.
Our organization has a bias-based training that we do now on a monthly basis. And it just puts at the forefront of everybody's mind of, are they conducting themselves in a manner that creates bias, or that they're acting on bias that's unfair to the community that we're serving? And the training, although short clips, it does keep it in the forefront of the employee's mind that we need to be ever vigilant to make sure that the decisions that we're making are fair to our entire community. As far as the implicit bias individually, they need to make sure that they're working with their community. The more they know about their community that they're serving, the more they're going to see their community as an advocate and more of a support system for law enforcement. We can't do this on our own. Law enforcement is everybody's duty. For everybody that's out there, just know that, like Sir Robert Peel had said, the community is the police and the police are the community. We just do it on the official level. And so for us to make sure that we're working with our community so that we do understand where they're coming from, we understand the different dynamics of each of the communities we serve, and the officers understand those nuances so that they're not exhibiting bias and they're not doing things. And so maintaining that training, maintaining that conversation during our briefings with the sergeant, being led by the sergeant, and oftentimes learning from negative examples that other agencies have done by showing a video of how it could have been done better, and by having those real life scenario-based trainings that we have in our briefings are really helpful for our officers to keep that at the forefront of their mind to make sure that we're protecting our community.
Thank you. Bill, same question to you about training and helping to remove implicit bias within your staff.
Thank you. Great question. We touched on this a little bit earlier when we were talking about the racial equity question. And there's, bias everywhere, in the community and law enforcement ranks, and it's normal. I was a psychology major in college, and I was always fascinated by the study of how people think and how your upbringing, your experiences play into your actions later in life. And we talked a good deal about this post George Floyd, when a lot of questions were being asked. And it was that time I partnered with a company called Bias Sync to bring unconscious bias training to our agency. And I was fascinated, I still am, by the program, because it's very revealing. A lot of us like to think, well, I'm not biased. I do things fairly, I treat people equally and so forth. But then you go through the training modules and you go, I could have very easily slipped into that paradigm, if you will, of viewing somebody in a certain way based on how they look or the circumstances or how they're dressed. And what's really neat about this program is it's not just a one and done or once every couple of years. It has micro learning modules so that our employees are exposed to a 5-minute module periodically, so that the idea of implicit bias and understanding and being aware of it is addressed regularly. And so hopefully it's more of a consideration when they conduct their daily business.
Gentlemen, we have time for a few more questions, but certainly one of the most important issues affecting Ventura County, almost an epidemic, I think considered by some, is the amount of opioid deaths. Fentanyl is coming in to all over this state, but tell us, and Bill, you're up first on this one. Share with us some of the policies that you're putting in place to try and get a handle on this, to stop the fentanyl coming in, to stop the number of people we're losing from dying from these overdoses.
Huge issue for us. If you saw the coroner's or the medical examiner's report from last year, we had 66 more people than the previous year. The previous year was a banner year, die in 2021. And then in 2020, 289 people, I believe it was, that died of drug overdose in Ventura County alone. And this is something that's going on nationwide. We're seeing an epidemic of opioids in our community. They're extremely addictive. They're deadly. Fentanyl is extremely toxic, and we're seeing carfentanil in the community now, which is very much more potent than fentanyl. One of the things I did to help our deputies interact with people under the influence and overdosing on opiates in the community was to give them Narcan, which is an antidote to opioid poisoning. So they could be, they're out in the community, they encounter people that are overdosing, they can administer this Narcan and hopefully stabilize or even revive the person. And I know we're saving lives. We use these opioid antagonists all the time. And it's just a very difficult environment. We still enforce heavily. Our seizures are larger and larger. but we as a society have to collectively focus on the demand. It's the only way to address the issue effectively.
Thank you, Bill. Same question to you, Jim, as far as what are some of the policies you'll put in place to reduce the number of opioid deaths and deal with the fentanyl epidemic?
Yeah, fentanyl is definitely on the rise. Overdoses are on the rise. With the naloxone not only carried by law enforcement, but other first responders, the number of deaths we would see in this community would be much higher. And people would then, I think, take a much stronger look at how we're incarcerating or how we're treating people who are addicted to drugs. The reality is, prior to Prop 47 and 57, when we had Prop 36, which was a diversionary program, when people were sentenced to 30 or 60 days in jail for being under the influence, more people were seeking treatment. Fewer people are seeking treatment now. And some of that is because of a lack of treatment options. We need to make sure from a treatment standpoint that that's available. From a prevention model, we need to make sure we're doing a great job, because right now, fentanyl is so powerful and it's hidden in other would-be drugs, including pills that kids may be testing, and in reality can be laced with fentanyl. One pill can kill. And we need to make sure our community is aware of that so that we don't have unnecessary deaths that we're seeing in our community. And a very strong enforcement effort to punish those who are dealing drugs in our community, working with the other agencies, both federally and locally, for those that are dealing drugs in Ventura County. We need to have a very strong program to make sure that we can arrest all those who are coming in here, to make sure they know that they're not going to get into Ventura County and victimize our community. Education, prevention, proactive policing, and strong measures from an investigative standpoint with a narcotics bureau that's experienced with other agencies is going to help the supply end, but also we need to reduce the demand.
Thank you. Well, we got to get back to this point that you're both running to be the sheriff. Jim, you're up first. Tell us why you were the better candidate. What makes you the better person for the job?
I'm a 31-year veteran with the sheriff's office. I've had the opportunity to work all over the county, like I mentioned. I was assistant chief of police in Thousand Oaks for 5 years, developing great forward-thinking community programs to deal with issues in our schools, threat assessment for active shooter drills or active shooters that were happening on our campuses across the nation. My proven ability to lead the organization, lead the men and women of this organization to be effective, have a good time doing the job, which makes them better officers with the community we're serving. When they're enjoying their job and they know they can have a positive impact on the community serving, we're going to get better productivity out of them. We're also going to get better recruitment effort out of them, because they're going to want other people to come work for them and with them. Our agency has a ton of potential. My experience is deep, like 31 years experience, detective, special enforcement, field training officer, 2-time officer of the year winner, Medal of Valor recipient. I've received my master's degree from the University of Oklahoma in administrative leadership. The only current employee of the sheriff's office who's attended the FBI National Academy, which is a 10-week program at Quantico, Virginia, where I attended with 225 officers from 23 countries in nearly every state in the nation. This allows me to have the largest network in the world to be able to reach out to members from the National Academy to share what's working in those other areas, how we can share information with them to keep our entire country safe, let alone the world. But having that experience, the proven leadership experience, the endorsements of people wanting me to be their leader are why they make me the choice for sheriff in Ventura County.
Thank you. Bill, same question to you. What makes you the better candidate for sheriff?
My depth of experience clearly sets me apart from my challenger. I've led this agency for the last 3.5 years, and for 2 years before that at the executive level, and for 8 years before that in the management ranks, including senior management for a couple of years. Worked in every facet of the organization. I'm uniquely positioned to influence policy in Sacramento and in Washington. As an elected member of the California State Sheriff's Association, serving on the executive board of that organization, I have access to the governor's office, the legislators, to the attorney general, and other top policymakers in the state. I'm also an elected member of the Major County Sheriffs of America executive board. I have that similar type of access in Washington, D.C. Ventura County has a loud voice through me serving in those roles at the top levels of government at the state and federal level. I was a graduate of the California Post Command College, the flagship program of the state's training cadre for peace officers. It teaches futuring and relationship building, and I've used tools that I've learned there for many years in leadership. And one of the reasons we're so successful as an agency is those relationships that I've developed. And working relationships with other agencies are not an issue if all you need to do is look at the results and they speak for themselves.
Thank you, Bill. I think we'll wrap up with a very interesting question. Let's learn a little bit about both of you outside of policing. Bill, you're up first. Tell us some of the areas that you get involved in outside of policing. What do you do in your spare time?
Well, thank you for that. I do have a life outside of work, not a whole lot these days, but I love to run. I love to bicycle. I was a martial artist for many years. Coached my children in soccer and baseball for many years. I like giving back to the community. I believe a public servant is more than a government employee. And I think giving back to the community through volunteerism is something that is very special and important to me. And I think we should all do it, quite frankly. The gift of one's time is the most precious resource that they have. I'm on the board of Casa Pacifica Centers for Children and Families. I've been a longtime board member of the Southern California Law Enforcement Torch Run for Special Olympics. Volunteering for Special Olympics has been a passion of mine for more than 15 years. And I was thinking about this recently. I've volunteered in the community for more than 40 years, first as a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout, serving chicken dinners at the Elks Lodge, parking cars at the fairgrounds as a high school wrestler, and then later in life serving as a coach and board member of a Little League, developing and managing the Canine Foundation to the point to where it's self-sustaining. Canine Foundation funds the purchase of all of our police dogs throughout the agency. I have a lot of things outside of the profession that I enjoy doing, but I feel it all equates to my love for being a public servant.
Thank you. And Jim, same question to you. Share with us what you like to do outside of the day job.
Yeah, outside the day job, I enjoy playing golf. I've got both my girls involved in golf now. They're one's a senior and one's a freshman out here in Simi Valley. Both play on the varsity team. So when I have the time, we go out and hit balls at the golf course, work on our swing. I'm very also involved with the school that my wife works at. She's a second grade teacher. I'm an auctioneer when they have their fundraiser. I help with their bingo. And the Nights at Columbus, I help make sure that we're providing resources for those who are struggling within our community. I'm also on the Homeowners Association board of the community that I'm living in to make sure that we're responsible fiscally, to make sure our community maintains its good looks so that we maintain the value of our properties. You know, it's important to make sure that you have hobbies outside of law enforcement to keep a balanced life. I used to an avid mountain biker until I crashed and shattered my collarbone. Now I ride a Peloton instead. It's a lot safer to get my exercise in. I do work out pretty routinely and make sure that I spend the time with the family when I have it. We go to church, we go on our weekend walks, make sure that I'm available for them because this job is very demanding and I do enjoy serving, but it is really important to make sure that I'm taking care of the family at home, that I'm maintaining my friendship circle that's outside of law enforcement as well, to make sure that we have a well-balanced approach to serving our community.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the closing statements, but I do want to take a moment to remind voters that your mail-in ballots are already in the mail, and the county voter information guide was sent to you about 2 weeks ago. And inside you can find the candidate statements. Both of these candidates published a statement declaring why they are asking for your vote. So it's one more resource for you. At this time, we're going to begin the closing statements. I'm going to go in the reverse order from the beginning. We will start with candidate Bill Ayotte. You have 1.5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. You know, I remember my first day on the job just like it was yesterday. And I've loved this profession every step of the way. I've been honored to serve. I was honored to serve as a deputy sheriff, and never in my dreams did I imagine I would be the sheriff of the organization. It was never a goal of mine, but it's something that you know I'm terribly proud to do. I'm not here looking to elevate my status, increase my pay, or do any other things than to simply continue serving this community. I'm really proud to be endorsed by the 4 living sheriffs of Ventura County. Many of the men and women who have worked in command level positions within the sheriff's office, within other agencies, that work with both candidates who endorse me in my run for re-election. They know what it takes to get the job done. They know the character and qualities necessary to be successful. And I'm proud of those endorsements. I'm proud to be endorsed by nearly every sheriff in the state of California. Those relationships are very important to being successful. They help right here on the ground in Ventura County. And my heart is one of service. I look forward to tackling the challenges that we face environmentally. And I look forward to having your vote on June 7th. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Jim Fryoff.
I've been in law enforcement my entire adult life. Law enforcement is not about wages. It's about service. It's about caring for the community we serve, respecting the officers that are doing the job, making sure they have all the tools, the training and support necessary to keep Ventura County one of the safest counties in the nation. I've got a proven leadership record. I'm endorsed by the current employees of the organization because they understand what strong leadership looks like, and that's why they're seeking a change. They know that I have the skills, I have the abilities, and as sheriff, I will also have that network with all the other sheriffs in the state and the access to DC and the access to Sacramento necessary to advocate for not only our agency, but for our county and our communities to make sure we keep Ventura County one of the safest in the nation. When I was the chief in Ojai, we had the lowest crime rate in nearly 30 years. When I was the chief of police in Thousand Oaks, it was the safest city in the nation, or in California, of a city of its size. I know how to get the job done. I know how to work with our community to make sure we're addressing all the issues that we're facing. We have a lot of challenges that are on the forefront, and we need a strong, positive leader who's going to engage with the community and the members of the organization to get us there. I'm very confident that I have the ability to do this as the sheriff, and I have had this goal in my entire career, and I have worked my way accordingly. I made sure I led my decision-making, knowing full well that this day could come where I would want to run the organization. I'm Jim Fryoff. The election is June 7th. Please vote for Jim Fryoff.
Thank you. So thank you to both our candidates. We know it's very hard work being a candidate. It's hard on the families. It's hard on all the volunteers. It's also hard asking for money. So thank you both for representing democracy and running for this very important job. I want to say again to the audience, I'm sorry if I didn't get your particular question asked. We had a ton of questions and only so much time. Right now, though, we have some very important announcements. It's my pleasure to bring back Kathy Morgan. She is the chair of the Voter Services Committee. Kathy.
Thank you to the candidates for sharing their views with us this evening and giving us the information we need to make an informed choice when we vote. I would also like to offer a heartfelt thank you to David Marin for moderating again this evening. At this time, I would like to share some important information about voting. It's not too early to plan your vote. The official ballot was mailed to all registered voters yesterday, May 9th. Be sure to sign the back of the official return envelope after placing your completed ballot in it. Postage is prepaid on the return envelope, so it can easily be dropped into a mailbox or into one of the 38 drop boxes located around the county, which are now open. You may also take it to any of the in-person vote centers around the county. 10 vote centers will be open from May 28th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. All 51 vote centers will be open for the 3 days prior to Election Day from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And on June 7th, Election Day, the vote centers will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Check your voter registration status at voterstatus.sos.ca.gov to be sure that your correct address is listed to ensure that you receive your ballot in the mail. To find Dropbox and vote center locations, go to the Clerk Recorder Registrar's website at venturavote.org. You can track your ballot from start to finish by registering at where'smyballot.sos.ca.gov. You will then receive texts or emails to let you know when your ballot has been mailed to you, will be delivered, received by the USPS, and that it has been received and processed in the elections office and will be counted. There are several nonpartisan voter information sites to learn more about the candidates and ballot measures, including Voters Edge, which is the League's nonpartisan site, and another one, Ballotpedia. I encourage all our candidates to include their information on these sites so that voters can learn about your priorities. As a reminder, this forum was being recorded and the video will be accessible from our website, lwvventuracounty.org, under candidate forums within 24 to 36 hours. There are links to watch the videos of past forums, as well as a link to register for our next candidate forum this Thursday for the Ventura County Treasurer's Office. Thank you from the League of Women Voters of Ventura County. Please follow us on your favorite social media site. And don't forget to vote. This concludes our presentation. Thanks again for being here. Good night.